In this second part, having looked at who the customers are, segmenting customer, targeting, renouncing, looking at what they do, what they need as they do it, what are their critical needs, separate the vital need from the trivial needs, translate this into metric and targets. You're ready to look at what you've got to do and the way you got to do it. Processes. Processes involves technology, people, material, environments. A host of things can go wrong. Any process produces variation. If you measure that correctly, and if you get the pattern of variability of the process, you can get a good idea of what's normal for this process and what is exceptional. What's exceptional is interesting in terms of learning. It can be destructive of value for the customer. The ability to separate a significant variation from an insignificant one rests first on understanding customer needs, for one thing. Second, on understanding the process operating characteristic. A pathologist trying to determine the degree of abnormality of a tissue sample that he's analyzing has a number of criteria, stuff that he's got to look at, count, and it depends on that, on technology that he's using, on his own ability and ability to focus, distraction, lighting, environment, and so on. He's got all sorts of opportunity for defects. Some variations will produce a defect that will be consequential. Some variations will be inconsequential for the customer. By studying this process closely, we can characterize it and understand the normal variation. A process, this process, when it's in control, produces this type of variation within this operating margin. Whenever it's out of there, something happened with the potential to destroy value, depending on the voice of the customer, and with certainly its load of information. If something happened, and if I have a good control system, I can go, isolate it, determine what happened, fix it, and learn. Learn what does what in this process, that is, characterize the process. In part 2, I will look at processes and variation and the connection between that and value creation and strategy at large. The strategy to operation or strategy to execution connection. Chapter 6 deals with managing processes. A central example in there is a child protective services taking emergency call, social emergency for children in need of urgent assistance. Response time is critical in this case. You've got to be able to measure it right and then to understand what it's telling you. This represents the voice of the process in a given CPS, Child Protective Service. You get the variation from one call to the other. Notice that just making them visual is already informative. The next step is applying statistical thinking here. A variation can only be interpreted by reference to standard deviation. These limits here delimit the normal process variation. Whenever you're beyond those lines, something definitely happened. Let's add this here would be an illustration of the voice of the process. Let's add to it the voice of the customer. It's been determined, let's assume, that more than 15-minute response time puts the child at risk, and that we should be able to meet this all the time, or all the time meaning 99% of the time or more, which is clearly not the case here. On average, we're all right, but we have all sorts of variation considering the issue here and the stakes. Of course, this is unacceptable. What you have to do is isolate the variables that produce this variation. then try to control them. Find solutions, that is. But you cannot find solutions until you've separated the vital few from the trivial many. In this instance here, we've added more staff on Sundays, and we're displaying response time on a chart to the practitioners. What you've achieved is lower the average response time and lower variation considerably. Some solutions will tend to improve average, others will tend to reduce variation. Move on. You're improving further. You still have outliers here. You're reducing the mean, but you're reducing the number of outliers as well. The last solution here, cell phone with practitioners on call, reduces the variation to an acceptable level considering the stakes. You're visually here, I would say 99.999% of the time respecting the standard, the service standard. Understanding variation implies that you've understood what the customer wants, that you've understood the features of your process, that you're able to measure it, to display it, and that the people receiving this information understand what we're talking about right now and are empowered to act. After this zoom-in view, it might be useful to do a bit of a zoom out to get the global perspective of the customer experience, the organization's processes, and the information system and technology that feeds you the information and send it at the right place. And for this I propose to use the Delta airline example, to which we now turn. This data integration chart, core model at Delta Airline, is produced by the company and adapted here by MIT Sloan School of Management. It nicely describes the customer experience, as discussed in part 1 of the video, from Skylink, SkyMiles reservation, ticket counter, boarding, baggage, with the goal of the company of personalization, having a digital relationship and loyalty programs. This then is a variant, a company representation here of the customer corridor. And you can, if you know your customers, you can have a pretty good idea of the emotiogram, the types and the sequence of feelings that you would like customers to go through. Parallel this with the operational pipeline at the other end, where you've got all the movements of aircraft, the maintenance of aircraft, preparation for flight, monitoring flight, unloading aircraft. These are, of course, all processes, input, output transformation, where the output of one is input into another. These occur in the physical world. They generate events that must be captured in the virtual world to be made available to the various players. The pilot, the airport, the employee, the gate employee, the customer needs information as well. So the Delta's nervous system, as they call it, involves 9 databases. Data on flights are related to aircraft because aircrafts make flights. Aircrafts are also scheduled, and customers are booked on aircraft with a given schedule, and there are tickets for that as well. Aircrafts need maintenance, and employees have to be scheduled to aircrafts as well, and an aircraft and a crew is at a given location, and so on. This, of course, requires a machinery and a design of an information system and technology architecture that is fundamental. If you'd like this to be in real time, and the real-time event producing virtual information that goes to the right place at the right time, it is a huge challenge. Few organizations do it well. It's also a huge investment, of course. Around it, technologies here, personal digital assistants, laptops, desktop computers, cell phones, and so on. These access information and receive information as well. Business reflexes is thinking about the shareholder. How do we make money? Scheduling better than competition. Setting prices better, dynamically, yield management, business reflexes. Let's make sure that we think about our shareholders. And employee relationship management. Developing your people. Making sure you're scheduling them right. That you give them a good quality of life as well as you go. And then customer profiles and being able to build and maintain a customer relationship. This is a nice view of a connection between the process view, the customer view, the data management view of things. If you add to this the organizational challenges, the way a company is divided into departments, layers of management, authority level, you're adding, of course, an additional layer of complexity to it. Let's look now, where we are used to see organizations as departments, series of departments with responsibilities. We have to learn to see it as a sequence, connected sequence of interrelated, value-creating processes. Let's look, for example, each arrow here represents a process with input coming in, output going out. Transformation, verb, in between. Each of these processes is taken from the APQC, American Productivity and Quality Centers model. And the model is the list, really, and you don't understand, you don't see, you don't get the feel for the actual connectivity of all this. So, follow me. Define HR requirements. Produces as an output a requirement for a job. This is the output here, but it's the input to recruit, select, and hire employees. The employee hired gets to work and to provide the service to specific customers. As this process operates, it produces data that is input into build the customer. And build the customer produces bill that is an input to process account receivable. Now there's a variety of process in there, and I've just selected randomly, more or less, to show the connectivity of it all. We are not used to see organizations that way. We see organizations more like departments, separated from one another, and we tend to have, many organizations have legacy information system that will only produce information on finance and will not give you a complete view of input to output, end-to-end process, and will not have information that is integrated, even data definitions that are integrated between various departments. And this, of course, gives you spaghettis because of these problems, because of limited empowerment and levels of authority. You're always, whenever there is a discrepancy, you're always going back. This is the spaghetti organization. Response time is very, very long, and if you analyze the process, there is much non-value added activities. This is not the nimble organization. The problems occur, of course, as you cross. The handover from one department to another is always a challenge and a potential source of variation, an opportunity for defect in terms of Six Sigma. How do you manage those? Through connecting those, through managing the organization differently. There is no solution in the old way of management. This is the problem that you get. Each of these clouds visually means this type of situation. The command and control organization is particularly vulnerable to this type of issue. Orders coming down from the top do not lend themselves to the necessary leeway and field adaptation that is required for quick response. This is a dinosaur. As you know, they disappeared. I think our dinosaurs are disappearing too, and the new economy organizations are helping a lot in a way, in a tough way, to clean the air and clean the business space from that. This is a metaphor that I'd like to use to look at the clouds, you know, the small clouds going from one department to the other. The metaphor is the 4 times 100 meter relay race at the Olympics. This is the Beijing Olympics with the US men's team dropping the baton, as you see here. The women's team dropped it as well. The relay race is a good metaphor to illustrate that excellence in your own 95 meter does not make for the 400 meter excellence. You need the connection point. As a runner, you're focused on your performance, but it's crucial that you understand the role, challenges of the one coming behind and the one after you. And that you get together to understand socially that you win or lose together, and then to agree who does what and how do we connect. And maybe I'll have to sacrifice 2 or 3 100 of a seconds in order that we collectively gain 5 or 6. This is the issue. The solution is complex. I discuss it extensively in the book in terms of process management, process owners, and so on. Let's now come back briefly to this slide of the process view, chain of interconnected process view of organization. One critical issue about each of these processes is, should we do that ourselves? Or should we let someone else do it? And if so, should this someone else be domestic? Or could it be in India? Could it be in North Africa? In Vietnam, which is the current trend right now? These issues, of course, are complex. And I discuss them fully in a series of 2-part video on business process outsourcing. It rests on the one hand, what kind of customer contact is there? The more the customer contact, the more risky it is. What is the degree of knowledge content of the process? Tacit knowledge versus explicit knowledge. If it is tacit, you cannot codify it, formalize it, and you have to depend on someone else. If it's critical to your strategy and it is tacit, certainly you should keep it for yourself. Of course, there's a gray area. Taking something that is tacit and taking the effort and time to make it explicit is worthwhile. And once you've done that, you may consider outsourcing. Outsourcing is a question of distance. Captive is we do it ourselves, we own the thing. Outsource is, of course, someone else does it, but it could be we partially own, or we build the facility and let someone else operate it. There are variants here. And there's another continuum here between, if we're in the US here, you can have it done in Canada and Mexico, you can have it done in North Africa, then India, and so on. Outsource and offshore. And this is what I call the sourcing space. And in the video on complexservicedelivery.com, you will see that there is also the process space. This discussion about processes enables us now to move on to the discussion of the connection between value, part 1, processes, strategy. Strategy is formulated in the strategic chessboard, but it is actualized, executed, and creates value through execution. Thus, this connection there. This is our 3 chapters dealing with that, 4, 5, and 7. Refer back to part 1, dual positioning. Market segmenting, targeting, competition, positioning, developing our own service concept, service package, and doing the same in the labor market as well. Mirror image here, job concept. Job concept, service concept, this was discussed earlier. Let's take the case of a financial planning outfit. that has isolated the market segment of well-to-do baby boomers with some financial notions and some technological knowledge as well. And let's say that their value package, their benefit package and their value proposition is, we will help you become better investors. At first, we'll do more for you, you'll empower us to make more decisions. Gradually, we will transfer it to you, we will train you, we will coach you to become autonomous, as presumably a baby boomer approaching retirement may be willing to do. You've targeted, you understand who they are, you understand what they do, and you've developed a service concept. Now, what kind of people do I need? Are they typical financial planners? I mean, if you look at all the financial planning world, there's all sorts of people in there. Some with good technological knowledge, some with good teaching knowledge as well, others who couldn't possibly think it. So you got a segment here as well, and develop a job concept that will draw these people to you so that you're the employer of choice for these people and that they'll be happy and your turnover rate will be manageable as well. This is the dual positioning. Then you got to measure it. I'll discuss this in a minute. You got to find the right measurement for this. And you've got to design processes such as build technology platform, train my clients in finance, train them technologically, set them up technologically as well, coach them, respond to their demand. These are all action verbs, these are all processes to be designed. And what we would like, of course, is these processes to be coherent, to create value for the clients, value for our employees, personal value, and value for our shareholders. We need coherence. It's got to fit together. It's got to be designed market in, customer in, and it's got to fit together and implement a strategy that will create profit leverage. Ways of doing things that will give more benefit than what competition is doing while lowering our cost at the same time. Giving more benefits at higher cost is easy. The breakthrough service is when you succeed in giving more for less. Then you're getting profits, and these profits can be recycled into development and so on. I call this the V2P model, value to processes. I've shown that the process view, there are many processes in an organization. And let's assume you'd like, based on the strategy that you're formulated, you would like to focus on the right process to improve. You can't do everything at the same time. You've got to scope processes one at a time, or a few at a time, depending on your improvement capability. That's scoping. If you select the wrong process, given your strategy, all you'll get to do is doing the wrong thing righter. First, of course, you need a clear strategic view and an ability to respond quickly to customer moves as well. They make moves, we make moves. And they surprise us, we try and respond and surprise them as well. But for each of those, we need to change something in what we do. For that, we need to know what we do in terms of processes, input, output, and we need to measure that to focus on the critical process, considering our strategic move. And we need Google Earth sort of thing to be able to zoom in, re-zoom in on the vital part through good measurements, and zoom in to the point where we've scoped a small, and this is a process mapping, and start measuring variation. Google Earth strategy, zoom in to a point where you get the right perimeter of process that you have to fix, and then do it right, which is the object of chapter 9 and 10. Google Earth metaphor, you're zooming in from a high level and you'd like to cut the perimeter among all the things you do of the right process to improve or the right processes to improve. The tools here I will not present. They are discussed in the complexservicedelivery.com website. There's an example on a competitive bidding process where those tools are explained. There are process tools and an early diagnosis tool. There you go. Let's come back to our financial planner. Let's say that the organization has assessed for a series of processes. Here I've got 3, 6, 11 processes. I've assessed their importance for the customer, and I've assessed their importance for strategy. This is presented in the book in terms of matrices that will correlate key strategic issues with processes and key customer needs with processes. If you map those, you can isolate the more salient process as those that are important to customer and strategy. But that's not enough to decide what you're going to do. You need to look at how good are these processes right now. Performance. Performance you will measure in terms of effectiveness and efficiency. Do they deliver the goods? 1 to 5. And do they use resources the best way possible? Efficiency. World-class processes, best in class, are those that do both. Your worst processes or sick processes are those that are very poor on both sides. These processes are the least, show the lowest performance. They are your best candidate for improvement, as long as they are salient. So let's put these two dimensions together. Performance, salience. Salience, as measured by the two dimensions earlier, impact on strategy, impact on customer, and performance, impact on efficiency and effectiveness, you would like as a priority to put very salient processes that display a very poor performance. So these would be 5 potential processes to improve. And what you would go through now is a scoping exercise, such as the one discussed in the bidding video. And not to just address the technical side, you'd like to think socially, managing across departments and functions to put a multifunctional team together to handle it and manage it. Manage it at the level of experts and manage it at the level of organization. This is discussed in part 3 of the video. In short then, efficiency, effectiveness gives you performance. Customer impact, strategic impact gives you salience. Put it together and you have the right information to select and manage an improvement and design portfolio, because you only have so much resources to invest. Take away from operation to improve and make things better and learn. So you should make sure you put your chips where the overall yield is likely to be the best. In short then, let's now summarize the key takeaways from this second part of the 3-part video. The organization's knowledge is embedded in processes, shared ways of adding value that translate into a chain of commitments distributed logically in the organization. Think the 4 times 100 meter metaphor. The only sustainable source of strategic advantage is the ability to learn, that is, augment knowledge, faster than your competitors. Understanding variation, thinking statistically, and managing processes are central to this endeavor or capability. Any strategic move that you decide to make will only generate strategic advantage if you can translate it into the right change to the right process and execute quickly and flawlessly. And this brings us to part 3, to which I suggest you now go.